I'm Jon, and she's Kate, and this is Plus 8 on Block. I want to talk about how Street Fighter 6 is evolving. This is something you and I have been discussing quite a bit behind the scenes. You think that Parry is going to evolve into this game and to be a bigger factor than it is now. Why do you think that's the case, Kate?
Parry and Perfect Parry, coming from Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, I think it's so incredibly important because if you do it just right, it can always be your turn, at the risk of about 50% of damage, but still, it's a great way to turn the tides in an unexpected way.
Yeah, I agree. It's important that you mentioned Third Strike there because Third Strike is where parries were super dominant, and they did not have the damage scaling that you mentioned at the 50%. And that's how come I think that Street Fighter 6 is going to go in that direction, because that's how it worked with Third Strike, where parries weren't as big of a factor early on until players got really comfortable with the frame data and how things were being approached.
Yes.
And it just seems like it's only going to be a matter of time before Street Fighter 6 really picks up with the parry system and it becomes a very dominant way to play the game. You agree with that?
Completely, yes. I think it's a very important thing, just like you said. The more a player gets comfortable in the timing of accessing the perfect parry, essentially they can always throw off the other player and make it their turn. So we did see this being utilized pretty early by Kikaru with JP, I believe, around the Red Bull South Africa event late June time. And he was really accessing perfect parries quite a lot, and it was a big momentum changer. So, hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that as we continue and progress through the game.
Yeah, it's important to note that Street Fighter 6's parry in some ways is not as good as Third Strike's because, as you mentioned, it's got the 50% damage scaling on there. However, in Street Fighter 6, you do not have to pick a high or low parry in there. And the developers have been very careful about balancing this to just make sure it's not going to dominate the game how it once did. However, you just kind of wonder, like, with people really picking up on timing and really knowing frame data and stuff, like just inside and out, that ability to really parry stuff, we saw it a lot with Ken's Jinrai kicks, where people were just consistently parrying those. When those would come out, you start to wonder how much people are going to pick up on that with like pretty much all attacks in the game. Like unless people play like Aki or Jamie or whatever, and maybe players don't know those characters as well. But it seems like with your top tier characters, it seems like it's going to be a very dominant way that the game's going to evolve.
Sure.
And then on top of that, with Street Fighter 4, they actually removed the parry option because of how overpowered it was in Third Strike. Ono talked about that being kind of like the Grandmaster chess high-level super thing, and it was so good that Ono was like, well, we don't want to have parries like they were. We're going to put the focus attack in instead. It was quite the interesting change that they made there. And so it's all that stuff leads me to believe, as well as you, that parries are going to come up and be a very important thing in the future of this game. And it's going to be interesting when the game's changing enough now with the patches and stuff, and so I'm thinking it might be about a year from now before parries kind of become like the dominant kind of way of playing. But how about you, Kate? Well, when do you feel parries are going to kind of take over?
I feel some people are already starting to utilize the perfect parry option very well, and being able to use it for their advantage. Watching some of the CPT, we did see how some players were utilizing it quite often, and then others were utilizing it more as a surprise. So they knew to throw it out once a while, and then to throw off the momentum of the opponent, and then try to get as much damage as they possibly could. So yes, it's going to be interesting to see how we go along. Then, I mean, there are some players too where you don't see parrying or perfect parrying that much at all. And then, they're still able to play and get wins and everything. But I think we're going to start seeing a switch in the future.
Very good. So we had the most recent patch here, and JP got hit pretty hard in this update. Do you think that they've done enough with the character, or do you feel like JP is potentially in a good spot now?
Initially on social media, there was a lot of concern, especially from JP character players, and Some of the people even playing against JP that said, okay, this might be a little too much. But then it always takes a handful of days and research for people to go, you know what, we're going to really examine Amnesia.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to examine different combo routes and branches from Amnesia. And what they ended up finding was, I saw a tweet that had a couple of videos on it that said that if they did Amnesia and did this one certain combo route for the way that it was set up now, that they were actually getting a little bit more damage than what the initial one was.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, man, But things like that, his mid-range neutral cane slice, that had been nerfed a little bit. Things like that. His anti-airs, that's a difficult nerf. But the thing also is that if you have a character that can take full screen control and command that much of close and far up damage, some things I can understand. Say a less reliable anti-air. I think that's possible. Being a Vega player, Vega in the last handful of years has had not the best anti-airs, and I can understand the reasoning why. It's compared to his strengths, so they have to balance them somewhere.
Yeah. So do you think that they're going to do more to JP to nerf him down in this next patch? Or do you think that they're going to pretty much keep him as is?
I think they're going to keep him the way he is.
Yeah. Yeah,
what do you think? Yeah.
I personally feel like they're going to do a bit more with JP. I think that these nerfs were very substantial in a number of regards and very much needed. This character tends to really dominate in some of the matchups in this game, and yeah, just to run a little too free, a little too much privilege. That's the nickname that we have for him, and what I would often refer to myself when I played JP is J privilege. So I think he's going to get a little bit more, but not a ton more. So moving on to the next characters here. How about Ken? Do you feel like Capcom did enough with Ken in this balance update, or do you think there's going to be more coming for him in Season 2?
They ended up working on Ken's jab. And I do feel that because there is so much attention brought on Drive Rush through jabs and everything, putting more focus on the hurt box and the hit box and frame data does make sense for him a little bit. I don't think that it was a catastrophic nerf or anything. The adjustments to his air Tatsumaki also, I think were fair. Well, we didn't see too much abuse of the air Tatsumaki. What we did see it in action, but not all the time. So I think that was something that was fair. If they would have been a big nerf to say his Dragon Lash or his Gen Rise, then I'd say, okay, you know what, maybe in addition to all of that, then maybe that would be too much. But they still kept a lot of options open for Ken players. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think they went anywhere near enough with Ken. I think he's one of the most downplayed characters in the history that's top tier. I think this is either, I know people have Luke up there as number one. That there's definitely a case for Luke being number one, especially with what you and I saw at Capcom Cup. But I personally, I think there's still a strong case for Ken being number one, and most of the Ken players, unfortunately, are really downplaying this character and how much privilege they have with them. It's actually been one of the most disappointing things I've seen from our community. It's like, own if you're going to play a character that's that strong, own it, kind of thing. Don't give me this crap about them being like 7th overall in the tier list. It's just, that is not anywhere near reality. I can show you a mid-tier character and you can go play them. And shout out to the people who are saying Ken wasn't very good and then got eliminated by Ken at Capcom Cup. We definitely saw plenty of that. So to me, I don't think Capcom's gotten nearly as far enough on Ken, and I'm thinking they need to do quite a bit more.
Well, I think realistically, a lot of people had felt that the main three were definitely in rotation: Ken, JP, and Luke. And it was constantly that rotation, and then expanding out, you could add in Dee Jay, Chun-Li, Guile, and Jury, and possibly Cammy floating in and out, and those were generally the big characters that we would see the most talked about and played at high level. Oh, and Blanca, you put Blanca in there, in and out. But yeah, Ken is definitely formidable and can hold his own. He was also good in the last season of Street Fighter V and off and on in Street Fighter 4. So he's always been pretty solid.
Yeah, that first season of Ken in Street Fighter V, we were talking with Combo Fiend about that, and he felt that Ken might have been the best character in the game in Season 1, even over Mika and Karen and all that kind of stuff. Very, very strong character throughout parts of the game. So moving on here, how about Luke? Now, Luke got the infamous crouching medium punch nerf,
That's right.
Arguably the best normal in the game, at the very worst, one of the best normals in the game. Do you think they did enough to Luke, or do you think that there's going to be more coming here in the future?
I think Luke and Ken are sort of in the same ballpark as each other. So, Ken's jab was investigated and switched a little bit. Luke's crouching strong. I can see them working on that. They also worked on his Vulcan, his Vulcan shot. No, it's level 1.
His
right?
level 1, yeah.
So we saw at CPT how I think it was Takedo. He had he was up to a level 3, and then I think the combo even was maybe crouching jab or crouching medium punch, Vulcan level 1. Then he did crouching jab or crouching medium punch, and then a Vulcan level 1 again, because the startup of it was so incredibly fast. So they went in there, and of course they adjusted his medium punch, but they adjusted the reaction time on his level 1. So now you can try to counter hit him out of that. And that's a big deal, considering that he still has the fastest fireball in the game.
Yeah. And to clarify on that, it's the hurt box for the first 5 frames of the move has been expanded on his Super 1. So it's definitely easier if you can see that coming, or you are trying to snuff it out. It's a little easier to do it. So,
yes.
So it's a good nerf, especially in this game where level 1s are so very important for reversals and other stuff. They are sometimes your best options at stopping anything defensively. So limiting that is definitely a thing. All right, so I personally feel like with Luke, the crouching medium punch nerf is definitely substantial, but I don't feel like it's near enough. And another character we're going to talk about here pretty soon is Ryu. And comparing Luke to Ryu, Luke just seems to have like all the advantages over Ryu that he could ever want, and like his damage and all the setups and stuff. So it feels like this is a step in the right direction with Luke, but to me does not feel like enough. Like they need to go much further with the season 2 update, because Luke was just dominating at Capcom Cup. I can't tell me how many matches that you and I watched there that was just, it's like, oh geez, like another Luke, kind of thing, at least for me. It got really frustrating seeing him come up so much, and to really help the character variety, this is something that you and I are big on, is character variety, like, because it's it's fine to see specialists up there, Men RD playing Luke, Chris Wong playing Luke, all that's really fine and great, major props to those players, but when 13 people are playing Luke, or however many people are playing him, it gets a little tiresome. You want to see some of the other characters up there. You want to see some variety.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it makes you happy when you start seeing Snake Eyes playing Zangief, or Mena mixing some Blanca in. It's very refreshing. It's definitely a refreshing type of thing.
Yeah, very good point. So moving on here, talking about characters who got some buffs, I want to get into Ryu. And we're seeing people explore Ryu again, which is really awesome to see. Daigo's playing him. I know that Valle was talking about it. I know that Ending Walker was talking about playing him more in this window. But the biggest thing I'm seeing is that people are saying that Ryu is not better than Ken or Luke, and that makes him the worst Shoto of the bunch. And that means to me that he's not going to take off in popularity. He's not going to be the poster boy, at least in terms of character representation that he's usually known for being.
Right.
Kate, how's that striking you? How do you think so far?
I feel that Ken and Luke have a little bit of safety nets attached to them. So you can do something that's a little bit risky and try to pull a risky 50-50 and still be able to, if you're a good player, juggle your way out of it. But Ryu, to me, still you have to play him as a very formidable neutral. I guess you could say neutral play, but here, the kind of players that remind me of Ryu is when you're learning your building blocks, and it has to be very specific, And the thing about Ryu is that even if you do play him in that way, with his buffs, I believe that his strength helps turn the tides. So you might not be as aggressive as, say, well, of course, Vio is a very aggressive Ryu player. I think in the right hands, he could still really do very well. Now, yeah.
Yeah, it's Valle was actually talking about Ryu with the changes and stuff, and he felt that that Luke can do the same or better damage than Ryu, but without having to stock up his Denjin.
Right.
His Denjin is extremely important, and one of the things that we're running into here with Street Fighter 6 is that characters who have to stock up their resources, basically, Blanka with the Blanka Chandals, or Honda with his Undertans, and then Jamie with his drinks and stuff. When you have to let up off the gas pedal, when you're not able to put that pressure on people and just go about your normal daily Okazemi life, what Street Fighter is known for these days, having to back up and build resources is a pretty significant disadvantage. With the potential of one character there, Jury tends to do very well despite that.
Right.
And it seems like she has multiple ways of charging with it. But anyway, Vaya was basically saying that the fact that Luke does not have to do that and Ryu does, and he can get the same or better damage than Ryu can, it's a really significant setback for the character. And Indie Walkers seem to conclude the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I can see that, and it's because anytime that you try to access and charge your dungeon, that's really opening yourself up for a hit. You're completely vulnerable. So that is a big concern. If you're playing in top competition and everything is on the line, and you know that somebody is just, trying their best to get that confirmed, the last thing that you want to do is to try to stock up to build your pressure. So yeah, I think I think that's a very good argument there. I don't know in a case like that what the possible balance could be for those characters. That would be something that Capcom, I'm sure, is juggling.
Yeah, we're hearing reports actually of them looking at that very extensively right now. It's why the Season 2 patch was delayed how it is, and we'll see if it comes with Akuma or where it comes in the future. But we heard reports basically they were unsure of what to do with some of the characters, how to do it, and so we got kind of like a preview update here. And so just finishing up on Ryu, I personally, one of the reasons I want to see Luke and Ken nerfed down is I'd like to see a few more Ryu players out there. If there's a very obvious like Shoto pick, all players are generally going to flock to that, and most people aren't going to give Ryu, the time he deserves.
Right.
And that's another reason how come I think that they need to knock Luke and Ken down, because it's just the amount of character variety there is it's pretty abysmal in terms of the Shotos. And Ryu should be one of the more popular characters just kind of by default. That's that's what he's known for. This is one of the most popular characters in all of video games, not just Street Fighter, but like literally on all video games. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of a big deal that he's properly represented. And I will say one other thing that I was a little disappointed here with Capcom is that mid-range zoning tends to be a very popular style in Street Fighter, and that's typically what Ryu is known to be. But as the series has evolved, he's really become much more of a rushdown character. That really was the way he was in Street Fighter 5 and Season 1, and then they basically removed him from the game after Season 1. So shouts to that. He kind of came back, kind of not. But he's really become a rushdown character in this modern era, which I guess that's fine if they're going to take the character in that direction. But it would be nice to see some mid-range zoners kind of come back, and Ryu normally fills that spot, but right now we've only really got Chun-Li. So.
Well, the issue is that the whole core of the game has changed, and I remember a lot of for myself these big changes starting to happen towards the last third of Street Fighter 4. There was a patch that ended up going through that specifically they were trying to make the matches, say, of Bison versus Guile more entertaining and faster paced, because the people that really know what's going on when you watch those matches, we understand what's happening in between with the charging and the frame data and everything else. But as a viewer that might be stopping by, it's not entertaining. So they were concerned about that because there were a lot of good matches between, say, Tampa Bison and Knuckle Dew. And, they were happening at a lot of the top 8s, and they were afraid people were just not understanding what was going on. And especially as a Vega player, we would be Barcelonaing all over the place, and they said no more of that, and they changed it so that when you land, if somebody has a full screen ultra, they'll just catch you. Because they didn't want escape or just constant zoning. They wanted action. So they took those parts, and when they created Street Fighter V, they completely changed the game because they wanted it to be entertaining for things like E-League. And then when E-League came on and everybody was watching, and they were trying to get more of a casual audience involved in fighting games because of how specific and unique they are, and they kept that momentum going. So they're trying to keep this heavy momentum, and I believe in introducing modern, trying to have new people feel that they can do something and being active and involved while really playing a very intense, aggressive game.
Yes, really good point. And actually speaking with Seth Killian about that, there's actually a member of the Battle Balance team whose job is to run away. And run away and play super defensive and just make someone's life heck, kind of thing, and not give them any kind of opening. But as you said, that can lead to a kind of a bad viewership experience, game kind of being boring and stuff. And so we, in this esports era, we need the fireworks, we need the intensity. And so that's a really good point about balancing the game around that and why Ryu has evolved that way.
Yes.
So moving on here, I want to talk a little bit about characters who got buffs. We'll go ahead and start with my main here, Aki. A few people are calling Aki's crouching light punch range being improved the single largest buff in the patch. That might be correct. It opens up quite a few combos for her. You and I have played with that. I think you felt the wrath of my Aki there for a little bit with some of the new combos and things that are available. So this character to me, she's definitely better, but she's better in a vacuum of Aki players. If you really enjoy this character and you really want to play her more, she's a more viable character. For me personally, I don't feel like she's moved up the tier list very much. Maybe a spot or two, maybe somewhere around there. I think it's kind of her best case scenario. Some of her combo routes are different now. Some things are a little bit better, but not drastically different. Not so much to the point where she's going to be, in the top 10 or something like that. She's probably still kind of on the lower half of the list in my opinion. But how do you feel? How do you feel about playing against Aki players right now?
Well, I think that the buffs for her were quite considerable because I have a couple of friends that they really believe if you include in her poison damage and create your traps with her, and then she starts going in and actual being active, that she can really stack the damage. So they're looking at her very, very closely right now and have been practicing her for serious competition, yes.
Okay. Well, hey, some more Aki players would be nice to see, actually.
Yeah,
it's,
that's right.
One of the characters I don't see too much of. So that's interesting. I'm keeping an eye out for some more coming up on the future. So now you're a DJ main. Now DJ got the change to his sway. And Cien was on Twitter saying that it's actually not a nerf, it's a buff, what they gave him. How are you feeling about the change to DJ sway? What are you thinking about it?
Generally, I believe what it was is you can do his sway, and then it's the amount of distance that you get knocked back that was adjusted. So really, you can still try to get the confirm into your crouching strong and try to get your launch combo going. I believe adjustments like that to people that are either can pick up characters and play them easily, or people like me that have played them for a good handful of months, you're able to adjust to it and then still be able to work and utilize it in a good way. So I think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and he also got the hurt box slightly increased on that as well.
Right.
Doesn't seem to be making a huge difference, and DJ's still, really good. It's seems like he's pretty much intact. Now, going on to another character, Jamie got the handful of buffs, and I'm seeing a little bit more from him. But again, he runs into that issue that Ryu does, where he has to back off to get the drinks and to get that. And now he can do that now after he does a forward throw. And that's his major buff there. But to me, still, I'm not seeing a lot of I'm seeing that the Jamie players are better, but I don't know if it's enough personally to see other people really pick up the character and kind of move over to him from someone like a Luke or a Ken or something. I still don't think there's enough incentive there. How are you feeling about Jamie's changes?
Well, with Jamie, and considering how technical he is, I think giving him these buffs, including how technical he is, up the fun factor. So you get the 4 drinks, you access his devil level 2, he drinks everything, and then goes ham. When his level 2 runs out and you're in the same round, he won't lose his drinks. So he keeps them.
Right.
And he can access another level 2. He could do it again. So if he wins or loses the round, then he goes back to, he has to start drinking again.
Right.
I think it's relatively fair,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Do you think, Kate, that's going to add up to us seeing more Jamie players, like a considerable amount more, or do you think it's going to be pretty much a status quo? How do you feel like it's going to play out with Jamie?
Well, I certainly hope we would see more Jamie players. I think he's very entertaining. A lot of Vega players ended up going to Jamie. I have a friend that is very adamant that Jamie is a fantastic character that's being slept on right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a bold statement.
Right. And very, very, very positive on that.
So lastly, we've got Ed. And I'm really curious, what are your thoughts on Ed so far? What are you seeing with this character? Where do you think he's going to kind of end up at? Yeah.
I'm thinking he's going to be around top 7.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I think he's pretty good. He has a great option for a run, a dash forward, a dash back. He has a basically long range zoning hits. He has a long range command grab. His Psycho Knuckle can go through fireballs. He has an uppercut, even though it's not one of the best uppercuts, but he has one. And I think with the ability too that he can throw projectiles, the projectile, the movement, the able to get long range command grabs and long range fishing for confirms. I think he's going to be great in the right hands. I think if Ending Walker works with Ed, then we're going to see some pretty fantastic things. So I think that Ed is really strong against burnout people, when people he's able to burn out. His whiff punish game is really strong. However, he's got a lot of startup on his normals and his specials, so it can be difficult to keep up with other characters in neutral. However, he has terrific range on his normals and his specials, but those come with larger hurt boxes as well, so they can tend to be stuffed in neutral due to the startup times and stuff. And then his anti-air game seems to be a bit weak, especially because of the slow startup there. And this means that he definitely can anti-air consistently, but he has to be ready for it, like on the ball, very on the ball. So it's very tough to juggle with that with the whiff punishing. And then characters who can alter their jump trajectory or have a really fast jump can definitely give him trouble there. But couple that with his, Ed has great mobility. And so his ability to push opponents into the corner or get himself out of it and side switch and stuff is a major advantage to have. It's a very, very good thing to have in Street Fighter 6. So I personally have him. I originally had him like more close to like top 5, top 10. I'm actually revising that now based on what I'm seeing and seeing him more close to like top 10, top 15 range. Okay.
And so I think he's going to be played decently by some players, but I don't think he's going to get like the traction like Ken or Luke or JP is seeing.
Right.
But that's where I'm seeing Ed end up at. So yeah.
Very cool.